So I picked up this book today, The Horizon History of the Medieval World. Now surprisingly, this book was only $7.99, a half-price book. Okay, and it states right here, The Horizon, Book of the Great Cathedrals. And then we have the Middle Ages. It's turned upside down, but it says Middle Ages. So right here, as we can see, this is the book, The Middle Ages. It's right here. We have the description of some nobles. And of course, they tried to scrub the color. As we can see, they painted it much as they could. This was a person of color. You can see they try to draw the lines. Same thing right here. A man of color, so-called black. Right here, you can tell that they also scrub the original brown or swarthy or brunette complexion from this woman right here. Okay, so these were not pale or Caucasian women. And how we know that, see the hand? Okay, same thing with this guy right here. Pretty much all the people in this depiction right here is even more noticeable right here. This was a woman of color. See, they always whitewash or write us out of our own history. So when you think of the medieval or dark ages, you can't see yourself during that time period, because in this time and day, black equates to slavery, white equates to master or ruler. And subconsciously in everyone's mind, not everyone, but most people think that. So when you look at historical depictions or you see something that's off, you're automatically gonna think, okay, you're so-called black, you was in slavery, but that's not the case. Same thing right here. This was a woman of color. Okay, they painted over her, or typification. Okay. So what they do is they go over these paintings and they try to scrub, much color off of, the original depiction and give you this garbage or nonsense. Okay. And also we're going to look at this book as well, The Wild Man Medieval Myth, not really a myth, and Symbolism by Timothy Husband, cross-reference or whatnot. So right here, it states, overleaf, several performers at the court of Francis Charles VI died when their costumes caught fire. Following pagan custom, they had dressed and danced as woldhouses or wild men of the woods. Wild man of the woods. So now back to this depiction. So you had the black nobles, and we already discussed that they scrubbed the color. This was a so-called black woman of color, swarthy or brunette. So were these two women down here. Okay. And even had, so-called black or Moors mock them. Okay. Of course, they painted, over this, but you can see the color right there. So they were making fun of the Caucasoid or Caucasian man during that time period. Okay. Same thing. So the concept of whiteness didn't appear until the 16th or 17th century. Okay. That's why they use those different words or whatnot. So when we look in this book right here, this is the color plate for Wild Man Storming the Moors Castle, detail left and center sections number 14. Okay. Certain books like these, they always omit or write us out, never showing depictions of black knights, so-called black knights or whatnot. You got to look that up online or find certain books. But their books, they try to omit that, or they never want to recognize that. Or they'll always say Saint Maurice, one black knight, right? Okay. Same thing. Defending the castle. This was in Germany, I believe. And look who the wild man is. These people right here. Okay. The wild man, the Caucasian, or biblically known as the Edomite. Okay. So just cross-referencing, right? So when we look at this depiction, you have the black nobility or nobles mocking the Caucasian or the serf or peasant in a servitile position. Okay. See? Tried to scrub the color, but, you know, it was mocking them because they was in a bestial state. I know it's hard to believe for some people, but hey, you know, they don't teach you this, okay? They don't teach you that. Now we're at the Bible Encyclopedia and Dictionary Fawcett's. Got this book off of eBay. Okay. Right here. Ironic, what, the werewolf, right? Esau, or Edom. Esau's surname, the firstborn of Isaac, Jacob's twin brother. Okay. Mount Seir, the mountainous territory having a reddish hue. Seir means rugged, applicable alike to Seir, the hirsute, like Esau. Notice it's in parentheses. Hirsute like Esau. Okay. To their rugged, forest-covered territory. Okay. The key word right there is hirsute. Once you understand, you know, what that word is and who that mostly looks like around the world, then you'll understand why a lot of brothers and people in general, not everyone, says who the white man is, because they know in their history, you know, as a depiction, you know, of what they were. And of course, with the intermixing and with the Moors and everything else, interbreeding with their women, or breeding with their women, you know, that hair didn't grow like that anymore. Had so much mixture. But right here, it even says right here, the Edomites became dwellers in the cliffs of the rocks. Okay. So people say Esau's not the white man. I mean, well, you tell us in non-secular or certain books who they are. There are books out there that tell you who the white man is, the so-called white man. We know black and white are misnomers. You know, they have indoctrinated our people to believe that black and white is solely, you know, a race, okay? But it's not. The Bible gives you biblical seed lines. The Caucasian or white man gives you regions and countries and so forth. Right here, Esau equals hairy, rough, okay? Came out red, whence his name Edom, all over like a hairy garment. See that? All over like a hairy garment. Okay, these are not so-called black people. I don't know why people can't correlate or put the two. Maybe it's just because they're ignorant or they just don't have the spirit to see it. And one brother, I think Truth Unedited, talking about it's an uneducated to think that the so-called white man is Esau. Now, I'm not foolish or ignorant to think that every so-called black person is of Israel, okay, or Jacob, okay, but I mean, you got to put two and two. They know this information. So right here we have the book, Who is Esau-Edom, by Charles A. Weisman, a Caucasian man, right? And who does he have here as the cover of the faces of Esau or his progeny? Okay. We have this book right here, Chosen People from the Caucasus, Michael Bradley, a so-called white man or Caucasian, forward by John Henry Clark. Okay. Of course, you have this book as another reference or source. Then you have Mr. J.A. Roger, Nature Knows No Color Line. And of course, Negro rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. All these are credible sources. So in this book, the characteristics of Esau-Edom. And again, in the first, Esau came out red. Red has many different variations of the color. All over, key word, all over, like a hairy garment. We know what a garment is, and we know what hairy in her suit is. So all these Negroes talking about Esau is not the white man, or he's a man of color. Esau has a mingled mixed seed, but if we're talking historical, he looked like this, and his descendants today still look like this in a sense. And today his descendants look, like him, of course, the phenotype of the Caucasian, also various different shades. Got Edomites of color. You got Edomites that look like Israelites or Negroes, etc. Here we find that Esau had the physical attribute of being red and hairy, okay, which is contrasted with Jacob's appearance, who was a plain man, okay. So right here we're on page 5, the legacy of Esau-Edom. Now, I'm not saying this. This is what this author is saying, Charles A. Weisman. He states, life and history of Esau. Esau was the firstborn of Isaac and thus was heir to the birthright derived from the direct racial lineage of Adam to Noah to Abraham. Thus, Esau was racially a Adamite, like we all are, a Semite, and a Hebrew, the racial stock of the so-called white race. Okay? The white race. I'm not saying that. This is what the source is saying, if you believe that. Keyword, if you believe that, with the proof and the evidence from secular and non-secular sources. Right here, we have this book, Their Time Has Come, Neanderthal. Now notice what they say in the beginning of the book, okay? The beginning of the book. The caveman, right? Like Captain Caveman. Now, this is non-secular, but look what they had to admit. And the Lord Yahweh said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people. Genesis 25 and 23. Okay. And of course, Chinese scientists are hot on the trail of the mysterious, hairy, wild man. Keyword, wild man. Like this man right here. Okay. The depiction of him. And have found indirect evidence that might prove the reclusive human-like creature is no myth. Okay. Reuters, 1995. So they know. It's just they put it in art form in movies for the people who will not know, because it'll tear this whole society down. Okay. This is why you kind of see why there's sympathy for so-called white people right now, because of, what the Most High is doing in the world right now. But, they have to build them up as a sympathetic figure and whatnot. But anyway, so in this book, Chosen People from the Caucasus, same thing. The wild man, Neanderthal, Caucasoid. Right here, I'm not going to read everything. I read this before in a couple other videos. It says, since Koestler, pronounced it right, collected several hundred reports, he concluded that some sort of wild man lived in the mountains of Eurasia. Okay, so a lot of the Edomites migrated or moved up there towards the Ural, Asia, or Russian steppe, the mountainous areas, or the Caucasus Mountains, aka the bottomless pit of the scriptures, right? Okay. Right here. They could speak a primitive language. Some Soviet scientists have maintained that Neanderthals might not have been able to speak at all because of the structure of their neck vertebrae impinged upon a potential larynx development. Okay, but the Captoric traditions insist that they can speak, but perhaps only in gruntal sounding grunts and a few single syllable sounds. And we've seen this in movies like Planet of the Apes when they lost their speech due to the virus, right? People had to teach them how to speak. State they didn't learn any speech. And it was our ancestors who taught them the oracles and the scriptures as well.
It would turn us into beasts. You talk about mercy. What would you have done? Harry?
So in this clip, we're going to see the quote-unquote Sasquatch or Bigfoot, which is in all reality the antecedent of the so-called modern Caucasians. That being, this is Esau or Edom, the hairy man of the Middle Ages and so forth. To be more correct, the wild man would be a better statement, because during the Middle Ages, this was them in a bestial state, okay? Uncivilized, no speech, grunting.
You take care of yourself now, okay? Okay. Mon Dieu! They have a language?
So right here we have the movie Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now this is a similar ending scene when Caesar speaks, right, to James Franco.
Caesar is home.
So let's think about it. When we look at the Darwin's theory of evolution, we see the ape, and we know in the movies the ape metaphorically represents the so-called blacks, and then it's evolving into a so-called white man or Caucasian, which is Esau or the Edomites. Because the progeny of Esau, at least the ones that came out of the Caucasus Mountains, those consist of Mongols, Turks, and the Khazars, and so forth. But they sprang from so-called black people, or in the scriptures, Esau came from Isaac. The Caucasian Edomites. But now they mock at me, men younger than I, whose fathers I disdain to put with my dogs of my flock. Indeed, what profit is the strength of their hands to me? Their valor has perished. They are gaunt from want and famine, fleeing late to the wilderness, desolate and waste, who pluck mallow by the bushes and broom tree roots for their food. They were driven out from among men, okay? So the progeny of Esau, the Edomites, they were driven to the Caucasus Mountains, the Russian steppe, okay? Europe is the bottomless pit. It has, well, it doesn't have minerals. It's mineral deficiency. That's why they had to come up from the bottomless pit, which is Europe, the Caucasus Mountains, and they ascended to various nations, depleting resources, conquering the indigenous aboriginal tribes and so forth, okay? They shouted at them as at a thief. They had to live in the cliffs of the valleys, in caves of the earth and the rocks. Now we should know, from conventional history, they're known as the Neanderthals. But biblically, They're the Edomites. They lived and dwelled in caves. Started from Mount Seir, then they moved all the way up to around Europe and, like I said, the Russian steppe, Asia, and settled up there. Among the bushes, they brayed, means grunting, you know, the teeth or and so forth.
Before we learned to talk, made a mess of everything. Did any good ever come from all that talk around all those tables?
Under the nettles, they nestled. They were sons of fools, yes, sons of vile men. They were scourged from the land. Let's get a precept. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 16. So now we're at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 16. Lest there be any fornicator or profane person like Esau, who for one morsel of food sold his birthright. Now under number one, profane, we have godless. So the black nobility had to teach the Edomites or Esau, his progeny, how to teach them, be civilized, how to bathe, know the oracles of the Most High through the scriptures. But through the miseducation here in America, they brainwashed our people to believe that the Bible was written by so-called white men. That's not the case. We had to teach them how to be civilized.
What we don't have in our history books is that the civilization we have in Europe today was brought to us by black people. Even black people don't know that. Even many black people don't know that. They don't know that the Moors, they were West Africans and North Africans and Central Africans that came to Europe and ruled Spain. They brought civilization to us. They showed us how to use soap, how to be clean, how to behave like a decent human being, you know? All these things, we didn't know that before the Moors brought civilization to Spain. Did you know that the Moors ruled in Spain for 700 years? Where is that in our history books? It's nowhere to be found. Because why? If you are giving black people that power of having once ruled over white people, wouldn't black people start questioning, oh, we were once at that point of having such a power in a white man's country over white people, and where are we now? So of course they have to hide that history from you people, because knowing your true history is knowing your true power.
Right here. As we shall see, some of these apparently trivial details about captors, which in no way contradict our picture of Neanderthals, but only add to it, become extremely suggestive when we come to discuss Esau of the Bible. But the truth of the matter is that the Israelites were quite literally plagued with offspring like Esau. They are referred to as the hairy ones in the Bible, and according to rabbinical editions, they were numerous enough to contest Jacob's leadership of the Hebrew clans. Okay, right here, page 139. Indeed, the commentators bear out this interpretation when they tell us that Jacob counterfeited the voice of Esau by growling from deep within his throat. The outdoorsman odor of his clothes was achieved through more obvious means, for Rebecca simply appropriated the cast off garments left over from Esau's last visit. The stench, we were told, was akin to a field of rotten potatoes. Okay. So right here we have this book, author Koestler, The 13th Tribe. I have another video on my YouTube. So we have all these sources telling us who the so-called white man. I use so-called because that's that's a misnomer as well. So we have the 13th Tribe. We have chosen people from the Caucasus. That's 2. We have this book right here talking about how Esau is hairy or rough. That's 3. We have this book right here. That's 4. Then we have the wild man right here in medieval myth and symbolism. It's not really a myth. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I have more sources as well, okay? And including this book as well, The Rise and History of the Medieval World, okay? So they have to do a good job of covering their tracks, okay? And of course, the truth is not viral. I laugh at all these people online that have thousands and thousands upon followers. That's fine. You can teach them what you want to teach them and so forth. But the truth is not a spectacle, which everyone will be, no. A lie spreads quicker than the truth. Like, the scripture says, the path of life is a narrow path. The wide path is most religions. The Bible's not about religion. The Bible's about the Israelites, based upon the context of continuity of reading that book. But other people want to insert or add their own, doctrine or philosophy. I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't believe some of these camps out here that talking about, I'm Solomon in reform or reincarnation. I don't believe in that BS either. That's just man worship. Keyword, man worship. So you got to understand that the internet's not the real world. When I turn off that camera or I turn off stop making videos, I got to live my real life. Okay. And so a lot of people live in that matrix, what they call the internet or the World Wide Web 666. Okay. Because they're not really living. They're living through a screen or whatnot. So we're at this book, the 13th tribe. And we know that the Khazar converted to Judaism. Why did they? Well, here's, a little simple answer. The former have acquired a national identity. See, Christianity is not an identity. Black is not an identity. Black is a byword. See, these how smart these people were. Look, the latter are labeled as Jews only by their religion. So those people that call themselves Jews or Ish are not the biblical bloodline. Not by their nationality, not by their race. Race just means your seed line. Regardless of your hue, whether you're light skinned, dark skinned, swarthy, tan, etc. This, however, creates a tragic paradox because the Jewish religion, unlike Christianity, which is insanity, Buddhism or Islam implies membership of a historical nation, a chosen race. Here's another depiction. We can see the castles, and then you have him and his wife, her suit out here. Color plate 10, the wild condition from the 4 conditions of society. Okay. So peace.